It is 5:30. It is Wednesday. That means it is time to learn how to CPCU. How are you doing, Heather?
I am doing fantastic today, Matthew. How about you?
I'm pretty good. I feel like we were trapped in a episode of 24 there for the countdown. Did you feel the same way?
I know. I love it. I love the
Yeah.
new video. It's awesome.
Awesome. I had like 30 minutes to throw some stuff together, and I was just kind of like fooling around. We also have a little bit of a new background for the stream too, so would love to hear people's comments on what they think about it. Before we get into our episode this week, just to take care of a little business, just remember, if you're watching live, or if you end up watching this recording, please like, comment, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, retweet, get this out there to any CPCU or insurance folks that you think may be able to benefit from this information. This is How to CPCU, where we teach everyone how to CPCU. Very aptly named, if you ask me. But so this week we have a pretty interesting episode, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely, Matt. We are on fire for this week because we're going to be talking about chapters.
Yes, yeah, and more importantly, how to get chapters that don't put people to sleep on their feet, right?
Absolutely.
So you have a partner in crime. I post on social media. We had a mystery guest. I mean, she's not necessarily a mystery to people that are in the CPCU society, but I think we held publicizing who was going to be joining you for this presentation. But I'll give you the honors of introducing who we are adding into the mix this week.
Absolutely. It is my pleasure to bring into How to CPCU for this week Joanne Pickle. She and I have been redhead ginger partners in crime for many years now, and served in a variety of roles with the society, mostly within the Northeastern Oklahoma chapter, where she resides in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Joanne, why don't you tell everybody a little bit more about yourself?
Well, thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to be here on the podcast with you guys. This is the first time I've done it, so I am a podcast virgin. Please forgive me. But I have my little friend with me. This is Mr. Pickle. He makes good company in the bedtime. I didn't mean it that way. Oh God, yeah. I'm going way off.
Oh, he's a good snuggler.
Exactly. That's right. He's my snuggler. So I've been in insurance for about 20-something years, and you can tell that I'm all about taking risk by what comes out of my mouth. You'll never know what it is. So I was lucky enough to join CPCU in 2016 with a horde, literally a horde of other people in Hawaii, and did my conferment. And since that time, I served as leadership in my chapter locally, vice president, president, and now I'm currently interest group governor for risk management, loss control, and claims. So exciting times going on with the society, and then just our chapter, and crazy times with COVID. And so I'm excited to be here. And of course, Heather and I have known each other a long time. So, when Heather comes knocking, you really can't say no if you haven't figured that out yet. So excited to talk today. I guess we have some fun topics that we're going to cover.
Yeah, we do, Joanne. I know that you and I had the pleasure of presenting at the 2019 Leadership Summit a little bit about keys to a successful chapter, but we kind of took a little bit of a different spin on that whenever we did that presentation. We wanted to take it to a level that made it real for folks versus here is how you follow the plans that are given out to you, and be all stodgy and very, very I guess you could say bureaucratic about it. So we took it to a level of a personal touch, because let's face it, leadership, and especially in a volunteer leadership role, is all about the personal touch that you have with people. Now, there's an element of organization that's associated with that. And so we came up with the idea of, so you really think you can lead, huh? And we kind of did the spin-off of, so you think you can dance, so you think you can sing, all those TV shows that have been out there in reality TV world. And we came up with a hashtag for it. The hashtag that we came up with was COVF. And what that stands for is connection, organization, and variety and fun. And let's face it, making your chapter run is really based on those four things. Wouldn't you say that, Joanne?
Oh, absolutely. And you can tell that from the connections you make with one another in the group, but more important, connections that you make with people outside of the group to show them how exciting insurance can be. Because let's face it, normal people don't think insurance is exciting, but being an insurance nerd, I kind of do. So I really want to get my passion out there to bring everybody along and grow our chapter, grow the society, show what we have to offer. And that's through being able to connect with people.
Yeah. Matt,
Awesome.
what about you?
Yeah, no, I think the one thing that I think we keep pounding the pulpit on figuratively and quite literally sometimes is just that the society is really mostly about the people, right? Like the knowledge that's shared or the tools and the tactics and the techniques and everything like that. It makes you more of a tactician and things, but really it's ultimately, getting together with the people in order to kind of facilitate that exchange and that sharing and things like that. So engagement is paramount because, if you don't have the butts in the seats, it's just like the environment, the machine doesn't go, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you got to connect with these people to do more. You need more people because if the same people do the same things over and over again, what do you get? Not a whole lot of fun, right? So you need to really charge them up. And I'm not old by any means, but I say you got to bring on that young generation, right? And kind of make them realize how important it is to get involved. And genuine connection is a great way to do that.
Yeah. And I think that really means, Joanne, that we got to make it personal, right?
Oh,
We got to be able to be vulnerable enough to have a stuffed pickle doll on a podcast with folks and, share a little bit of our personality and our fun. And I think that through the CPCU Society, you have a safe space to do that. And you have a safe space to do that in your chapter too. Because let's face it, there's no pay that's associated with running your chapter. You do it because you believe in the cause, you take the canons that you swore seriously, and you want to give back to the groups that are around you. Now, leading a chapter takes skills though. People don't have to show up to your events. Nobody has to give up a weeknight to plan for I-Day or a Saturday to go to a Good Works event or do something like that. But your events can be filled. And the reason why that they can be filled is they have that personal connection with the chapter, that sense of community within your chapter, your shared values. Sharing your personal interest with your chapter members really gains trust with them. And especially this year, you've had to figure out some new and different ways how to do that. Develop that trust and responsibility in between people within your chapter, because we're all kind of isolated and we've had to figure out some cool and different ways to do that. And one of those ways is right here, right now, every single week doing those types of video casts to get people connected to what it means to be a part of the CPCU Society, whether that is in their chapter or on the global or in the international level at the society level too.
And I think while COVID has kind of sucked, we can all agree on that. One of the best things that came out of it is the additional connections that were made, because I would have stuck with my little chapter group, but being able to have the Zoom meetings or the happy hours or podcast or whatever, I mean, the connections have grown so much more. And I love it when I just wake up and have an email. Hey, I'm working on this. Does anybody have a contact for this? You're like, heck yeah, let me see what I can do to help you. And I think that really gets people excited when it feels like they had add value to others. And so those connections are huge, whether they become personal, professional, psychological, whatever. I think that it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And I think what it also means, Joanne, is that you have to exercise your emotional intelligence bone.
Oh, girl.
Because, if anything, 2020 has taught us that agility and flexibility has to be the name of the game. And what empowers you to be able to do that as a leader in the chapter is being emotional intelligent, being an emotionally intelligent person and really working on yourself to be a better leader. Honing and developing your emotional intelligence helps you to establish connection to the people that you need inside of your chapter to make things successful. Whether you're a gigantic chapter, whether you're a medium-sized chapter, whether you're a very small chapter, you need people resources to be able to get things done. And you got to be emotionally agile and develop and exercise your emotional intelligence. To me, that's probably one of the biggest things that I've learned being part of a chapter leadership in a variety of different roles. And also because, we talk about that phrase that we use a lot. It's kind of like wrangling cats and, herding cats. To be a volunteer leader, it takes a different type of connection with people to motivate them to want to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves.
I'm sorry to cut you off, Joanne, but I was just going to say, even that phrase of herding cats, it's not accurate. It's herding cats that have done like 15 lines of cocaine. Like that's what it is. That's exactly what it is.
Yes, because when you're talking about agile and flexible, my intelligence is where I can do that, because the rest of me is not so much about that. And I teach preschool kids at Sunday school, and so this has a lot of comparison with those preschool kids, right? I mean, we want to get these people involved and engaged, but we got to show up and be fun and happy and animated. So, and give them some food for thought is one of the most important things. People want to walk away with a what's in it for me. Okay, this is what's in it for you. You show up, we're going to give you a good nugget. You're going to make a friend, maybe have a drink or two, and you'll be good to go, right?
Yeah. And I would absolutely say that developing your emotional intelligence through this type of an experience and being part of a chapter, that is such a transferable skill set, because there are so many companies out there that value that emotional intelligence over a high IQ. They can teach you how to do things technically, but that capability to be able to be self-aware, to be to just be emotionally intelligent and agile in the circumstances that you have to deal with inside of a chapter, it can be the most important predictor of success in other leadership roles that you might take on in your actual career that you do.
In your everyday household. I mean, approaching your spouse or significant other with some emotional intelligence, Matt, I'm sure that would come in handy around your house. But
it would be really nice if I could bring some of that home. That would be good.
If only we could teach that to our children and have them learning this leadership skill earlier in life, right? So
that's true.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would have to say the emotional intelligence thing it's something that's talked about a lot, and it's still understated. Like I can't even begin to say, like it helps to show a little bit of vulnerability as a leader, right? But at the same time, there are certain situations where you literally have to, put on your suit of armor, so to speak, because folks are looking to you as to how you're going to react, right? And so in this particular case, I could say just, in my experience working with the New Jersey chapter, and I'm also the governor who works with Long Island and Central Jersey, had those chapters not kind of like run into this as opposed to they didn't run from it. They kind of like leaned into COVID. Their membership saw a really positive vestige or symbolic kind of leadership that came with that. And it was just one of those things where it was like, look, I don't care what the circumstances are. We're going to create opportunities for you all to network, to learn, to improve, to have leadership experience or test those kind of like leadership skills. And so I think it paid off in spades when you had leaders at chapters during this situation. That's still ongoing. I mean, it's not too late to start, right? But during the situation, that kind of put forward that that image of like, you know what, it's not going to stop us. We'll just move on to the next thing, adapt, overcome, and we'll take care of it. So yeah.
And I think with talking about some of what's going on at the society level and the different changes we're seeing, being able to approach it with some emotional intelligence really helps you kind of adapt and really embrace what's going on so that your chapter is in the know, right? So it's not like, hey, this is at a high level, this isn't impacting us. But if you actually connect and lead from a perspective of, emotional intelligence, you can bring everybody along with you. To your point, Matt, it's kind of like everybody's going to lead into it. And if you do it right on the beginning, you can lead that charge of the lean in, right? I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah, as Cassellni always says, leaders are not born; they're definitely made. You know, and you may be somebody that's sitting out there going, I don't really excel at this. You know, like I have no idea where to even start. And it's all about awareness and really practicing the skill set and understanding that people are going to give you grace inside your chapter if you're open and you're transparent about that. You know, and that's what I've always said. It's like the chapter and the society and the volunteer leadership positions that are within them, whether that be, you know, I'm just sitting on a committee and I'm part of this committee, or I'm actually, you know, I'm the chair of I-Day for my chapter. You have so much of a sandbox to play in with that to develop that skill set. But you got to have some emotional courage. You got to have some emotional transparency to be able to move through those processes and grow through what you go through, I guess is what you have to say.
Absolutely. So. Yes. And from a small chapter, our Northeastern Oklahoma is like 54 paid members. Now that means 20 show up for meetings on a regular basis kind of thing. And so we are hungry for people to show involvement and want to get involved. And so that does take a lot of courage for somebody to jump out there. We're a pretty tight-knit group, and so to have somebody come in, we have to be aware that that could be off-putting. So you've got to be, hey, let me invite you in. We're aware enough to realize that we know each other, and now we want to know you too, because quite frankly, we need you to keep us going. You know, we're facing difficult times. All the chapters are. I mean, if we don't retain and recruit, I mean, unfortunately, we're not looking good. So we got to really push. And COVID didn't help with some of that, because a lot of our insurance fees are social. In case you didn't know, we like to build relationships, and having that outlet for some people has been a little bit challenging. So we really have to reconnect and be able to lead in that time, for sure.
Joanne, you threw me a softball there for sure. So one of the biggest components of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. You know, I'm naturally a very outgoing, gregarious person that can be overwhelming to people the first time that they meet me if I'm not careful about that. And, you know, I think about TV characters like George Costanza and Homer Simpson. Those are people who aren't so self-aware, right? Well, maybe George was, you know, like, because he really knew who he was as a person, and Killing Independent George and all of that. But it requires you to have the ability to be able to uncover your blind spots, and to be willing and open enough to ask others to sit down with you and share feedback with you and the perceptions that they may have about you. That is difficult. Okay. You don't like to hear that everything's not so sunshiny and rosy and how you handle people and everything, but you're going to grow through that. You're going to learn through that. And for chapters, this is about self-reflection. You got to look back at the events that you have and the things that you've done within your chapter and question yourself about it. Write down those moments where you could have done something differently and improve it the next time around in the next event. And actually create space to talk about that in your chapter board meetings that you have. Have that self-reflection time. And if you're a big chapter that has a lot of committees and everything, you got to connect with those committees and find out their feedback about how you might have driven something out in the chapter, and let them help you to reflect back and be aware of the things that we could have done differently. That should be a routine practice for you when you're working on events. It's not just about we're patting ourselves on the back and we did this fantastic job, you know. Ask yourself those questions regularly.
Well, you know, and you have to be willing to realize, okay, our little group made of the board has this great idea and we're going to love it. Now, our board is 4 women and 1 man. So a wine walk and a fashion show for us was like, yeah. For him, not so much, right? And for him, we did axe throwing for the men of the chapter. Now, the ladies, not so much, but the guys totally enjoyed it. So we have to be kind of willing to say, it's not all about me. We have to kind of go to the masses a little bit. And I think some chapters are probably heavier, more one gender to another, and to try to keep it neutralized so you don't turn anybody off is a big thing. Taking time to reflect back on what that looks like, how to engage people where they are, not what we want, becomes a huge part of it for sure.
That's a huge piece of it. Part of the conversation that we're having 2019 and 2020 has to do with diversity and inclusion. It has to do with, being an open and inclusive kind of environment. And that variability in the events and the messages and how the messages are delivered, I think is huge. Like if you feel like you're in a chapter, I think where you've had the same 3 or 4 events or same 3 or 4 meetings every single year, they have the same tenor to them, the same message and things like that. It's time to mix it up. Like even if you haven't had a mix up at the leadership level and you're a small chapter and you have pretty much the same, 4 or 5 leaders every single year. It's good to flex your wings or spread your wings and try something new. Even do the same event but like a different slant on it, right? Just anything like that to try and mix it up and also, like you said, what you think is appealing or engaging wouldn't necessarily be something that someone else would choose. And so I forgive me if I'm trampling on some of your future thunder here, but ask the chapter, ask the people what they would prefer or what they would like. You don't have to be an omniscient leader that knows everything. Take some recommendations from the audience, right? Like what's the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Poll the audience from time to time. I think that'll help you out.
Phone a friend. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Plus, I mean, what other way to feel kind of special than if somebody takes an idea that you gave and you actually implement it in a meeting? I mean, most people are like, hey, that was me. That was my idea. Thank you.
Yes. Yep. Buy-in.
Yeah. Buy-in. Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Mary asked, sorry to cut you off. I'm trying to take comments as they come, but Mary asked, have your chapters had any success with virtual networking events during COVID? And if so, what did those look like? You just got done, Heather, with a pretty big I-Day that you did completely virtual, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Our I-Day was ran via Zoom, and they kept the spirit alive of how we normally organize our I-Day with our MCs, kind of moving around their houses and showing, different looks and everything as they broke in between speakers. And engagement was incredibly high, and we're only learning through that process of like, hey, we can do this like to the next level if we happen to end up in another virtual I-Day. And looking at the way things are going, a lot of our spring events are going to end up being virtual. In the chapter here, they have like a symposium every single year that's done in conjunction with Illinois State University. And the students are involved in that. The students in the risk management program pretty much plan out the whole event. It's going to have to go virtual because of where we're at with COVID right now. And they're already thinking and innovating around, hey guys, what if we did a game during the event and not just polling, in the Zoom feature? What if we allowed some breakout rooms for networking that could happen within Zoom as well? There are ways to establish that. Engagement and buy-in to those is a little weird because there is this thing out there that I've heard about called Zoom fatigue right now that folks are actually going through because they're just so tired. I was in a webinar earlier today, and one of the people that's on another board with me said, hey, I'm not going on the camera because I'm getting ready to go into a 4-hour Zoom sprint and I need to practice a little self-care, So you got to be aware of that. That's another part of that self-awareness piece of emotional intelligence, is that you got to have some give and take, especially in this virtual world that we're living in right now with folks, and help them to understand that there are ways to engage. It's just different. It just looks different than it normally does.
So we did a couple of different things for our chapter being smaller. So right when COVID was starting and we were kind of getting on lockdown, we had already had a plan to do a CE offering, and we were going to do it in person. Well, we had to change that CE offering with the state's blessing and did it all virtual. So that was a little bit different because, you're almost literally taking pictures of who's in the class to make sure you can get your CE credit. It wasn't quite so, Men in Black, but you know what I'm saying. Um, we had to get some people had to really respond. We had to show that they were talking. And thankfully, it was small enough that it was easy to go around and say, Matt, what do you think? Heather, what do you think? And we could kind of have a dialogue, even if it was a little bit uncomfortable. People still knew we were trying to engage. And then we did on a side gig I have, I'm a wine guide. And so we did a virtual wine tasting where we basically shipped out wine to everybody, and we got online and we did a wine tasting, and which was a little bit awkward at first, but after a few tastings, everybody was real comfortable. I don't know about that.
It's a miracle how that works.
Yes, yes. But it was kind of fun because you were a little bit, in a way, people were like showing up at the door at the same time, and it was just fun if everybody played along. And we're not one to play along because we're grown-ups, we're responsible, we don't do that. But if you play along with it, it's really relaxing and fun, and people just go with the flow. So it isn't easy, Mary, to your point. It's difficult to kind of get that networking going, but if people just kind of get over themselves and accept that, let's just do this, guys, come on, I think it would turn out a whole lot better.
Yeah, we're actually looking at doing a wine tasting for our holiday get together for New Jersey chapter. So that's funny that you say that. That's like we're doing it a little bit differently. So as opposed to getting wines that can be shipped to the attendees, we're getting a list of like 3 or 4 that are readily accessible at pretty much most wine stores or liquor stores, and we're going to do it that way. The other thing was I was lucky enough to crash a Dallas chapter meeting. Unbeknownst to them, I got an invite from my inside guy, and he gave me an invite to the meeting. But they actually, if I can get the screen share to work correctly here, they did like a trivia, right? And so this company, Kahoot, I think they do mostly like educational stuff and things like that. But it was super simple. It was like you were able to set up kind of like a trivia competition game really quickly, and they would just share the link that you go to in the chat for the Zoom meeting. You go onto the site and you get to participate in the trivia competition. And, one of the people in the meeting is the moderator and gets to kind of control how that goes. But it was super fun because there was all pop culture questions. There was insurance related questions. We got to talk some smack to the people that didn't get the insurance related questions, which was fantastic. So yeah, no, it was a good time. It was a good time.
Yeah. That sounds so fun. I'm going to put that in my list of stuff. I love that.
Yeah, it's called Kahoot.
Kahoot. We could do a survive. I'm talking about what this goes to variety and fun, Heather. I'm sorry, I'm getting off topic.
It's all good.
Like, wouldn't it be great? We could do some Survivor Zoom thing and do the taste challenge, and everybody has to go find their own cricket and think they're going to eat it.
Oh my goodness!
Oh my god!
Oh wow! Now you got my wheel spinning here.
I know, that's like Amazing Race. Well, how do we do it?
We should make this an inter-chapter event, though.
Yes, yes.
Like get multiple chapters together to have some kind of fun event like this. And for those of you that aren't aware, there's also been a long-standing Friday night CPCU happy hour that happens with a bunch of us every Friday. I think it starts at 4:30. And so if you're interested in an invite to that, just to kind of see, that's just a bunch of people getting together for a happy hour on Zoom. And it's been going on. I think it might be the longest running CPCU event right now, other than maybe annual meeting and everything. So, and it is so much fun because you just have a variety of people show up, and you can show up and you can leave whenever you want to. I know that the claims interest group did a wine tasting as well during the Inter-Risk conference, and boy, did we got an education in wine in that event, because we did do actually like one of those shipping and events where people ship wine to you, and you sit down and they tell you about all of the things about the wine that you want to know, and it kind of descended into a little bit of madness at the end, because we had 3 bottles of wine to finish.
Well, you didn't have to finish them. I mean, it's a moral imperative, but
I'm not a quitter.
In for the long haul. I appreciate that.
And that leads me to another emotional intelligence thing. Social awareness and being yourself and being radically transparent with people is incredibly important to being a chapter leader. You need to listen better and longer. You need to ask questions. You need to be willing to observe your chapter's environment and think about things that are going to cater to the people that are within your chapter. You did that with your events, Joanne. You had the wine walk and the fashion show, and then you had the axe throwing and everything, just to try to move things around for the people that were within your chapter. And I'd encourage everybody to bring your whole self. Be who you are in your chapter. People are going to see through it if you put up some kind of front that you are something that you're not within your chapter. So,
Heather, I'll tell you, and I think we've all experienced this, there's 100% chance that you'll see the climber emerge very quickly in the group versus the person who's just genuinely there to kind of help the group grow, be part of the group. And that's that transparency part. If you just kind of show up and you're like, hey guys, I'm in it for the long haul, what you got going on, versus my next step is this. I mean, it is immediate, apparent what's happening, and you are going to isolate yourself from so many people. So I think that having that self-awareness, having the chapter, because in a chapter, if that happens, how are you as a leader going to address that? Are you going to pull that person to the side and kind of have a conversation that's like, hey, I'm glad you're here, but let's get to know you more, and let's stop with all the ins and outs of all that stuff. I think that becomes really important. And then, you talk about the listening and asking the questions. So I get this a lot with my husband. I have to actively listen to him, not just sit on the sofa and nod my head at him. I have to actively be hearing what he's saying so I can engage in what's going on. And so, asking the questions and then actually listening to what's being said versus, oh, I know what they're going to tell me. They're going to tell me they love wine walks. No, not so much. So I think being transparent and keeping yourself in that, self-check, check yourself before you wreck yourself. That's, I think, the perfect way to put that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and part of that you've both touched on is making the chapter engaging isn't about making the chapter what's engaging for you, right? Like they might coincide, which is a happy, coincidence. But look, if you're a chapter leader and you have a bunch of chapter members that would rather, they don't like axe throwing and they like something more passive, then that's fine. Choose something that's more passive and go with that. If they do like axe throwing and doing crazy stuff, then, and you're not that person, I mean, you kind of have to lean into it. Like you make lemonade out of lemons, it's just one of those dynamic, and you don't always have to put the chapter before yourself, to what you said, Heather, let people know who you are and be genuine and allow them to take an interest in who you are. So not every single event has to cater to the entire chapter, even, right? Like you can have some niches within the chapter where it's I'm still hard pressed to find an actuary who's extremely outgoing. It's probably because they know the statistics about the life expectancy of people who are outgoing versus someone who is more passive. But but that being said, if you have a lot of actuaries, I mean, maybe you're just hanging out, having a couple of drinks or chilling out somewhere. Whereas if you have a bunch of crazy brokers, I mean, you're jumping off a building doing something. I don't know, that's just basically the way it works. But it's definitely one of those things where you don't try and make the chapter what you want unless it happens to align with what, the membership wants.
Good point. Yep.
Yeah.
That is so important, to know your people, know others, and manage those relationships well. I think about Julius Caesar and Darth Vader. Those are two individuals who did not manage their relationships and their lives so great, did they? You know? And it kind of led to their ultimate demise. But to manage those relationships, you gotta know your people, and you can't make your chapter just a reflection of who you are. It absolutely requires a very clear articulation of your vision. There's going to be chapters out there that are more focused in on diversity and inclusion events because that's what their chapter membership wants. There's going to be chapters that are more organized towards, we're going to get people together to have fun and network and just enjoy time together. There's going to be chapters that are going to have more professional style development events because that's what the chapter membership wants. But that requires an intentional effort around figuring out what it is that your chapter wants and needs from you. And being like radically honest with people as you relate to them and taking their feedback and going, okay, that event didn't resonate so well with folks. Let's revamp, let's rethink, and let's try to figure out something that can connect people in the way that they want to be connected in the chapter. And you might be part of a chapter that offers all of those things just because you are a large chapter that has the ability and resources to be able to do that. And then you can cater to all the different types of crowds that you might have within your groups. So in completely, you guys are like softballing me all the things that I need to talk about when it comes to connection in the chapter, but we do need to talk a little bit about organization as well, because while this is not my strong suit, I would say, I can consider myself kind of an organized person, but I'm probably better off at moving things on the fly, I guess you could say, because of the types of environments that I've worked in insurance. But organization is incredibly important, and the society actually does provide you some pretty good resources that are out there. It consists of planning. You've got a plan for your events. If you're a big chapter, you might have a committee that plans a particular event or particular things that happen. But if you're a small chapter, it's going to require all of the resources of your entire board to be able to plan things out and get things driven out. So there's a big planning factor that's associated with it. Organizing your board is incredibly important as well, just as crucial. Communicating with that group, making sure that they understand in advance what needs to be done. Don't micromanage them, though. Don't have your fingertips down on top of them all the time. Let them go and be the best. Turn your people loose and let them go to be the best that they can be. Because once again, you got to consider that chapter leadership work as that sandbox for people to learn and grow and develop in,
Absolutely. I like to be organized because I feel like I can get things done a little bit better when I'm organized. But sometimes strong organization also turns people off. And so you have to really find that balance of being organized without throwing it in people's face. I mean, yeah, I think what we found some great success in our chapter is taking one day at the beginning of the year and kind of building our theme, building the year out. So we're organized right then. And then the rest of the year, we're kind of winging it. I always say, like my daughter's eyeliner, she's just winging it. We just wing it along the way as we go. But that helps some people not have. Last night I was teasing about the axe throwing, telling the guy he had performance anxiety because he couldn't throw the axe. But when we get to a point when we're not feeling as organized, we don't have any anxiety about it because we did everything on the front end to lay the plan for the perfect year ahead. And then we address, we pivot as we need to, but having something as a starting plan makes everyone feel so much more confident as you go about the year. And it gives those others who are not traditional organizers a much better flow because they feel like, okay, we're still having some fun. Yeah, but we know we have a plan, so we don't have to feel like we're going to lose it on the end.
So a facet of kind of the generational dynamic that we also have going on is I've found, and again, this is a stereotype, so it's not universally true, but the older generations that are involved in the society, many of them are very much organized, plan, put it here, write it down, SOP, everything like that. I think a lot of the, I consider myself Gen X, even though I'm on kind of that cusp between X and millennial. But a lot of the millennials are maybe not as measured, I guess, in the way that things go. They're so used to technology giving them the ability to just kind of pivot on the fly that overburdening that structure is not a good thing in their eyes, because it doesn't give them any flexibility. There's also no, what's the word I'm looking for? There's no kind of like, not necessarily excitement, but there's just no kind of like, oh, I didn't know I was going to be doing that today. Like, there's no surprise built into it, right? So I've actually seen the chapters that do really well with this. They create like what you were talking about, where they create kind of like the outer structure or kind of like the skeleton, but then how the skeleton gets decorated or how it ends up filling out is based off of just kind of, all right, let's follow this where it goes, and kind of, if something doesn't work, we'll veer away from it. If something does seem to work, we'll veer into it. And that's, I think that's really important, because, and again, that also fights against that kind of complacency aspect of it, where if you've done the same 4 lunches every single year on the same day and the same time and similar speakers or similar topics, like, have kind of that structure, but then like, create some ability to kind of like call an audible, so to speak, and have something happen that is organic, and don't be afraid to make a mistake. Like you said, Heather, it's like a sandbox, like, so you have an event that flops, that doesn't mean that the chapter is going to fold. Like, it's not going to happen. Right. Like, so don't be afraid to make a mistake. Like, but don't let your performance anxiety at the axe throwing competition deter you from going to the next event. I'm just saying.
Exactly. Well, and I think it's important to say, hey guys, we tried it, it didn't work. We're learning from it. Fail fast. I mean, it's okay, because I don't want people to think that we're so about everything that we can't admit when we did something wrong, or we tried it, it didn't work. It's okay. And people realize that, hey, they're trying to make it better when you admit that something doesn't work versus trying to shove it down your throat all the time, right? So
And I mean, I know that our chapter, planning is like so very important, just because you're talking about coordinating such a large group of people all of the time. But we put the onus of that and the information of that like on the various committees or the various directors who might be responsible for a particular piece of what's going to go on for our chapter. But we do develop that overarching like work in progress, like calendar of events. And we started sending out, I think we did this most of the year this year, like save the date events for folks, because and we told people, hey, this might be flexible just based upon speaker availability for our various chapter meetings and things like that. And of course, some of our events had to go out the window this year just because there was no capability to be able to bring people together to do the things that we wanted to do. So this was a year of learning for our chapter and how to grow and develop and shift and pivot and put things in just a completely different format than what the chapter was adjusted to. Because in truth, my chapter, although we do have some we have some incredible speakers that come in and bring in like great topics and events, we would go to the same location at a hotel and have, the hotel meal that was there and everything. And we would get great participation in some events and not so great participation in other events. And it was like this year shook us up and made us realize, hey, we can do this a little differently. And what's crazy is that hotel's never going to open again because of COVID right now. So we're going to have to make some decisions probably in the near future about like, we're going to have to shift and adjust where we have events. And that's going to bring variety and that fun into our planning that's going to go on for the next year as well.
I can just imagine Paul Rosner going, I hope it wasn't chicken.
Paul would be right. Most of the time, chicken is on the menu.
Sorry, I had to get my catty comment in there.
Yeah.
No, but that variability or that ability to kind of like shift on the fly is also a really important leadership trait. Like, not everything goes to plan. Obviously, you set out with some kind of structure in mind at the beginning and some kind of endpoint in mind, but say you undershoot, say you overshoot, say the whole thing catches on fire. Like, you got to be able to deal with any of those, contingencies or develop contingencies for any one of those situations. I can tell you that, the New Jersey chapter, it's a point of pride for me that a lot of our events were able to kind of like shift and morph. And yeah, some of them we had to just basically say, this isn't going to work. Like, we every single year, what was funny was it also kind of compelled us to, have you ever had this experience where like when you move, you have a really great opportunity of like throwing all the crap out that you really didn't need in the first place? This has kind of been that moving year for us, where it was like, we had a couple of events where we did for 2 or 3 years and they seemed like a great idea at the beginning. They were the fashion show that we thought was going to catch on, and it just, it did not. And we said, you know what, we don't need it. Like, let's not push on a string. Let's not try and make this thing work when it really even hasn't worked in the past. And it's kind of given us that opportunity to reevaluate and kind of like step back from that. Not to mention the fact that, and I'm sorry if I'm getting long-winded, with my comment here, but not to mention the fact that I think this has brought the national presence of the society even closer together.
Beep, 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 international.
International. Yeah. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Anthony Feinberg is screaming in my ear right now.
I have to now I feel like I have to like email Anthony and find out if there's a way for that I can like remotely attend a European chapter meeting or something, because that's something I haven't taken advantage of. But that being said, it's brought the CPCU Society community together, because I've attended, like I said, I attended virtual meetings for Dallas. I attended meetings for the Pacific Northwest and Seattle chapter. I've attended, the Into Risk was absolutely fantastic. From my desk, I was able to meet people from basically all over the world. And so I think that's also, pushing this thing forward, is the fact that we are getting even more international and interconnected, despite the fact that we have these individual chapters that you have some autonomy in what you do on a day-to-day basis.
The road shows kind of initiated with our Northeast chapter, because I was like, I wanted to do this so my chapter knew, but we need to do it virtual. And then it just kind of, well, why don't we do this all the time? This is great. We should do this. And it was, I mean, I got to tell you guys, seeing how the group has come together and the resiliency that our peers have shown through this COVID time and dedication to connecting with one another, connecting to the chapter, staying passionate about growth. I mean, quite frankly, it's been better than some corporates out there. So let's just give a round of applause for that, right? I mean, I'm like, yes. I'm like, I don't know of any other volunteer organization, and that's what we are, that has stayed as true to their whole intent of growing and educating as much as we have through all the different things that we've done. National, international, federal, state, whatever. I think we've done a fantastic job. And this is a great example of it. So this little brainchild has just gone on fire.
Yeah, you just got to think about like the variety of speakers that you have available at your fingertips today for your virtual events.
Yes.
I mean, you can dial up. Good night, Matthew, you guys in your New Jersey chapter I-Day, you had like the monolithic mega cast of amazing insurance personnel out there that just brought such diversity and such like, they're powerhouses, like, and you were able to coordinate that because you could do it virtually. And hey, there's not a lot of expense in getting a speaker to come onto a Zoom call with you.
No, a perfect example of that is we had a couple of speakers that normally we would have had to pay travel costs and would have basically costed them out of our price range. And we didn't have to pay the travel costs. And so we were able to keep them in the mix or bring them into the mix because of that. Not to mention the fact that we had a couple of speakers that if we had had an in-person, they would have, for all intents and purposes been, double booked and wouldn't have been able to do the event. So that's also a huge change in terms of, who you're able to kind of put in front of your membership. I think the other dynamic is, so what helped us was our I-Day last year, so 2019, we actually had some more hybrid-y type events. So it was kind of hybrid-y in the reverse, though. So like, for instance, Bill Wilson of Insurance Nerds fame, he'll probably kill me for saying that. He was famous before he was an insurance nerd. But Bill Wilson actually led a virtual CE course with people sitting in the room and him being in his home in Tennessee, and he led the CE course for an in-person event in New Jersey. I thought that was absolutely fantastic, and it was like that was like the trial run. And once you do that thing, it's like I forget if I've ever mentioned it on like a CPCU broadcast, but it's like, are you familiar with the story of how Bannister broke the 4-minute mile? So when Bannister breaks the 4-minute mile, first of all, you had all of these doctors saying that it was absolutely impossible. No human could run a mile under 4 minutes. They would literally kill themselves. Their heart would explode or all this other stuff. Okay. A load of poppycock. Like, there was no scientific evidence to back it. It was just this unthinkable mental barrier. He breaks the 4-minute mile on a day where there were less than optimal conditions, cinder track, headwind, raining, like throw whatever you want into it, okay? Runs a sub 4-minute mile. Then, because he was competing with all these other people, within a month or 2 months of him breaking the sub 4 minutes, like 2 or 3 other people then break the sub 4 minute and break his record. So it's like, once you get past that mental block of being like, oh, we could never do that, or we could never try it. I hearken back to the way I learned technology and computers. My parents brought millennials. You can clutch your pearls when you listen to this. My parents brought a Hyundai computer into the house. Okay, not an Apple, not a IBM, not a Dell. I don't even think Hewlett Packard existed at the time. Hyundai, like the company that makes the Elantras and the Sonata and stuff like that, they made a freaking computer, okay? So they brought this gigantic 9 million pound computer into the house, and it ran on stuff that was not Windows. It was Norton Utilities and directories and all kinds of other stuff. And I started playing with it, and my parents were afraid to touch it. They thought they were going to break it. Okay. My inclination as a child was, let's see how we can break it. Like, let's test where the the point of no return is. And that is exactly how I ended up learning technology. And that just kind of like speaks volumes about how you can run your chapter to be engaging. You're not going to break it. Like, find out. And if you overstep, you apologize. You say, all right, we won't do that again. You throw it in the garbage can, and then you go trying something else.
Right.
But that's a perfect analogy for what you can do, kind of like find that engaging event or program that you never thought existed.
So Matt, all I got to ask you, though, is did you play Oregon Trail on the Hyundai computer?
Come on.
And millennials, you might know what that is, but it was like the most fantastic video game ever for all of us that are Gen Xers here. Okay?
First game. Yes.
Yeah. You always try and ford the river, and you always capsize in the middle of the river. I don't understand that.
Yeah. Matt, as you're talking, and I'm thinking, yes, as leaders, we have to be okay with the fact that we might not make it, that what our idea did float through, it might have failed. But as participants, as people who attend things, we have to kind of remember that too. And I think sometimes I get so excited about leading it that I forget that sometimes when I'm just attending something, if it doesn't work, it's okay to go to somebody and say, you guys made a great effort, and next time we'll get it. I just don't think sometimes we do that. To Heather's point, I don't always know if the grace is there for us when we don't hit it on the head. You know what I'm saying? So I have to personally be self-aware, emotional intelligence to come back and realize that my group is trying their hardest, right? And so maybe it's okay to float a good vibe to somebody who's trying their hardest. So,
and I would say that for sure. Like any participants out there, if you're just somebody that's coming to chapter events and you're trying to figure out a way to engage with your chapter, they want your feedback. Okay, don't be afraid to share your honest and transparent opinions about how things go, because no one's going to get angry or upset with you because that event that you went to just didn't personally resonate with you or didn't work for you. It helps your chapter to grow and get better at what you do and get better at offering things that might be more up your alley. If you will be honest and not just check the box that, oh yeah, everything was great on the survey, and not give any candid feedback. So your chapter's asking you those questions because they want to know, not just because they want some affirmation from you that everything is just hunky-dory all the time. So
yeah, that's a good point. Sometimes it's, again, that vulnerability, that transparency. It's okay to tell them when you don't have it all together. Yeah, good point.
Yep. Absolutely.
You guys are so fun.
Wow, I know. And like, we have almost passed an hour here, but we have to talk about variety and fun because that is the most important thing in a chapter, right?
And that's kind of, I was like, this whole thing has been about variety and fun. I thought we've thrown some great ideas about the different stuff, the wine tastings, the golf contest, the axe throwing. I mean, the bottom line is that, except that your group probably would embrace variety more than the same hotel all of the time. You can do a Survey Monkey to ask the question. When I took over our chapter, that was one of our things. It was like everybody always met at noon. Well, for crying out loud, people who are on these strict, work schedule stuff, they couldn't break away at noon. So the first thing we did is say, when do you guys want to meet? And by and large, it was after work. Happy hour maybe might have had something to do with that. But I mean, it was like, okay. And we did see a spike in our attendance because of that. And then it was like, okay, well, now let's see if anybody still wants to do this or if they might want to do a breakfast. And we just checked back in with them periodically to see if we were still meeting their needs. And so don't be afraid to do out of the box type of thing on that kind of stuff. It was just really surprising that they embraced the variety. They didn't always want the chicken, right? We want something different. I'm not going to go fish. I'm not going to do that. But
and I would say for sure, you need to ask your chapter members to be your cheerleaders.
Yeah.
For your events. If you want people to show up and you have people that come to your events regularly, ask them, put a specific task in front of them. It's a way to get them engaged in the chapter more, but say, hey, if you really liked what happened today, or you really enjoyed going axe throwing or doing whatever event that you've done, tell somebody about it. Word of mouth spreads like wildfire. And it's the number one way that people make connections with in sales and all kinds of things. They hear about you and they hear about what you're doing, and they're like, I want to do something just like that because this chapter is doing some cool, fun things to be involved in.
I ran for high school student council under the whole premise of I give a great senior party. And that's how I look at this, is you want to be that person that's going to say, you come because I'm going to give you a great party. And you might get to learn something and meet some really cool people. But that's kind of that whole thing, is that we want to make sure that people are there to engage and to be, okay, get them in the door with fun, and then they'll see the genuineness of the group and the connections that can be made and the emotional intelligence and the organization that went into everything. I mean, it's kind of that one-stop shop, but we all know, to get them in the door, you got to make it fun. I mean, you got to put on a production, whether we like it or not. We know that's the way it is.
Yep.
Well, and the phrase that comes to mind is culture beats strategy.
There you go.
Right? That's what it is. If you can build a good culture, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Like, you could come together for an origami class. Like, it doesn't matter. No offense to the people that might like origami. It's one of those things where if you can build a culture, whatever that culture looks like. Look, if you are the chapter that are 3-piece suits, buttoned up, hardcore, mental elites within the industry, go that direction. Like, that's your culture. Okay. If you are the culture that, meets for happy hour more regularly than you do 9 to 5, then be that culture. If you're something in the middle, then be something in the middle. But that culture is what creates that buzz. It's what creates the fact that people want to invite other people to come along. Like, these are amazing people. You should, like, Matt's this crazy person. You need to meet Matt. Like, just come along once and see what it's like, and that's basically all it is. Like, you just need to create a little bit of that buzz where it's like that culture becomes almost synonymous with, who the chapter is. Like, oh, that's the, like, let me just, like, think of, like, the rundown of chapters that are typically well represented at the annual meeting. It's like, Heather's chapter is so big. You guys are really eclectic, though, right? Like, you have some subgroups within your chapter. I'm trying to think here. Like, most of the Florida chapters are pretty good. They're laid back. It probably has to do with the fact that it's like warm there, 12 months, 11 months out of the year, and they're always at the damn beach. It's probably why Abby Flo moved down to Tampa.
Yes.
Okay, but like, they're usually pretty chill, hang out, like, that kind of like almost like surfer vibe kind of thing going on, but figure out what your culture is, right? Like, and whatever that culture is, then use that as the center point to then kind of like draw in from the periphery and get your membership to be the voice box to really kind of invite that next person, that next potential CPCU. Hell, like, get your spouses involved. Do you guys have like events where your spouses come?
Oh, my husband won the axe throwing thing last night.
Yeah.
He's not a CPCU. He's an entrance agent, but I brought him. So
look, some chapters have people who are spouses and no one knows that they're not a CPCU. Like, that's culture. That's family. That's, bringing people in that are not just, oh, do you check these boxes? Okay, fine. You get to come in. Like, it doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah, I love that. That's so well said. And I totally agree. It is, I'm a big family relationship person. And that's how I look at that group is I sit down, what's your story? Not where are you from, where do you work, but what's your story? Tell me about you. And then we'll figure out how we work together and all that jazz. But let's get to know the people first. And then you go, all the things that we talked about, our COVF is right there with all of that. Starts with the relationship and works its way down. And I don't have a light on, so it's getting dark behind me. I apologize.
It's okay. The sun went down on me last week too on our video, so it's all good, Joanne.
Little dark.
And I think it's also important to make sure that you recognize members in your chapter in a special way. During our I-Day event, and we typically do like a big new designee event because there's just a slew of new designees every year up here with our chapter. But we typically have like a event at the local brewery, and they do a brewery tour and a really nice, like hors d'oeuvres and dinner thing. And it's a big networking event. And a lot of the chapter board members will come, committee members will come, and the new designees are invited as well. Well, there was no capability to be able to do that this year. So we had to figure out a different way during the I-Day to really recognize the new designees. So we kept their names scrolling during the breaks. All the new designees. The program that we designed had a whole page that was dedicated to all the new designees and the groups and everything. And we also we had some funds this year for that group that would have been spent on that event at the brewery. We turned around and we gave them all a gift card to the CPCU Society store so they could go buy something from the store. So it's just a way to say, hey, we want you to be a part of our chapter. You are the lifeblood that's going to move this chapter forward in the future. And the best way that we can get you involved is to start recognizing you today for the accomplishment that you have. So
that's a very good shout out too. Yeah.
And big plug here, new designees. If you are out there watching this or maybe watching it on the replay, the December Interest-Group Roadshow is all about you. We're going to be having a panel of new designees from 2019 and 2020 to talk about their experiences, because I truly believe that the new designees are individuals who can mentor up and bring about that new, fresh experience, not the Oregon Trail that we have all been on for a while. They will be able to provide that perspective that we need for the future, and we need to hear from them. So we've got a panel that's coming in, and it'll be a lot of fun as well. We tell everybody wear your ugly sweater too, because it's a holiday style event, and the flyer and the invite is out on the CPCU Interact page. So get out there and sign up. It's a limited registration.
There is Heather's post on Interact. By the way, if you are a CPCU chapter leader or even just a CPCU in general, and you're not on Interact, you are missing out. There is a wealth of opportunity and knowledge and literally interaction on that platform that is available. But yeah, if you go on there, you'll see one of the top posts right now is Heather's thread on the roadshow for the interest groups. And let's see, we got Kisan. I'm not sure if I know who Alan Boyd or Andrea Grimes are. They're both 2020, so that might make sense. I didn't meet them in person. But we also have Jen Witherby, who's going to be a chapter governor represented. Sue Gala, who's on the Leadership Council. Brett Clausen is going to be the moderator for this. And he is. Did you give him this nickname, Heather?
Actually,
Brett Santa Clausen?
I think that was Elaine George who did that.
Oh, okay.
We were
all
in
right.
a planning meeting for this, but I had to take it to the next level and make sure that it was in the post.
I think there is a fuzzy beard and a red hat in his future.
Absolutely.
If not, I'm going to be sorely disappointed here.
Yeah. No, it's just another way to connect, guys, another way to connect virtually. And we really want to celebrate those new designees because there's so much that we can learn from them and so much that we can, so much also like giving back that you can do with that community out there. So take the opportunity, jump into that meeting. We want to see you there. It's going to be a great panel discussion.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
I have to say, saying thank you and recognizing people, like just coming from the sales point of view, is you can't even measure an ROI. Like, because people don't, here's the other thing. Anyone who's in a leadership position, especially if you end up being a leader in a volunteer organization, you learn very quickly that people are motivated by more than just money. Okay.
Mhm.
It's really easy when you're a hiring manager or a supervisor to think that adding to the bonus pool or something like that is going to recognize someone and they're going to be motivated by it. Some people could care less. Okay. Some people want to be stood up in front of the crowd and patted on the back. Some people are wallflowers and they don't want that, but they want something else. They want a token or a trinket or a day off or something like that. The idea of, recognizing people within your organization, especially when it's a volunteer organization, is huge. If you're not getting paid, you got to get something, right? Like even if it's a gift card, even if it's a paper certificate, even if it's a I don't know why I'm on origami, but a hand folded treat of some sort. Okay, like there has to be something that you give to these people to commemorate what they've done and what they've achieved and how they've put into this organization selflessly. Yeah.
And I think it's also so important, Matt, as well, to like our chapter has a practice of sending a thank you email every, and then also like a written letter to our individuals that are volunteers within the chapter. But we copy their manager on that email so that their leader in their organization recognizes exactly how that person gave back to the CPCU society. It creates buy-in, it creates engagement, it creates that moment that they can go, their leader can come to them and say, hey, you did this. That's fantastic. It's like a double return on investment for doing that thank you. And it's just a simple email is all that it is, but you call out the things that individual person did. Of course, that does require that you have a network of people that can figure out who people's leaders are in their organization, but that's not too hard to find out. It really isn't. You just got to take the time and be intentional about that.
Yeah, that's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I actually think in the future, I'm just like throwing stuff against the wall to see if it sticks, but we could include that in this programming, right? Like if someone wants to nominate like a super duper CPCU who's just kicking some butt and wants some public acknowledgement, like I think
Yeah.
maybe we can maybe Miss Pickle and her stuffed sidekick could be our first, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
What makes that pickle even better is that it has a mustache, because I would never eat a pickle with a mustache. Like, I don't know. There's something wrong with that.
He's so cuddly.
All right. Goodness.
Well, so we could talk about this for like hours and hours. I think we didn't even touch on the Circle of Excellence. Do you want to do Circle of Excellence next week, Heather?
Yeah, we could do that. I think we can.
Okay.
We can roll with that next week.
Yeah, we could definitely. And look, you're welcome back anytime you want to come back, Miss Pickle. I'm just saying, you are a ray of sunshine. I absolutely love having you on.
Thank you. That was fun. I had a good time, and I'll always bring you fun stories.
All right, cool. You have any parting notes, Heather?
No, I just want to say, don't be afraid and have courage as a leader to try some new things, and make sure you got that connection, that you tap into your resources that are organized and make sure that they're running the things that need to be organized, that you always inject variety and fun in absolutely everything that you do, and stay building your emotional intelligence throughout your volunteer leadership in your chapter.
That's like a mic drop moment right there. Boom. Boom. Well, if you're still with us, have a very good evening. If you watch this on record, again, remember, like, comment, share. Please get this out there to anyone that you think could use it or might be benefited from it. Look, this is fun. We're going to have to do this again sometime, hopefully non-COVID, but we'll see. Whatever it is, we're going to adapt and overcome and kick some butt. So everyone have a good evening. And again, every Wednesday, 5:30.